behind the velvet rope. Let's just get right into it today because we are joined by the one, the only Jay Rodriguez.
Last time someone introduced me like that, it was at Oscars Palm Springs, and they did a big build-up, and they said, the one, the only Jay Hernandez. And I was like, oh.
That's...
So you got the name right.
I got the name. Well, listen, you just had like a cabaret, a mini night residency.
It's like a little back pocket thing, and I think I've been performing in Palm Springs a lot, and I just did a show this weekend for this big charity pool party for Reef. It's a great charity, and they, the number one thing people stopped me for afterwards was like, do people know that you're a good singer? Like, I didn't know. And I realized I have not done a good job of spreading that story. When I lived in New York, being on Broadway or my Twisted Cabaret Mondays at Excel, I was just known as the Puerto Rican who would was like the gay Justin Timberlake at the time. Didn't even occur to me post TV that I needed to do a lot of work to re-educate people about some of the things I did. But I'm about to shock you again.
Tell me.
You and I share a first name. My legal name is David J. Rodriguez.
I think, well, you were here before, first of all. You were here in 2020, and I think I learned that maybe when I researched for that interview, but I don't remember what I did yesterday, so now that, but I don't think
Anytime
I knew that.
I hear the name David, I'm like,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
And going back to Palm Springs, the reason why they introduced me as Jay Hernandez was we were just talking about David Hernandez from American Idol, who's also Latin, and I think we sort of came up around the same time in the circuit of live performance, and people would mistake us for one another.
Well, even though we are live here in studio in West Hollywood, where you live and I live part time, yeah, I mean, I came of age as a gay boy in New York City, so I remember the Twisted Cabaret at Excel Club.
For those of you who don't, it was basically this is how much time has changed. In 2000, I want to say in one is when I started. It was at a club in New York City called Excel, and it was 2 stories, and they mostly on this Monday night had singing drag queens or female pop divas with a live band. Cis gay men were not allowed to perform because we were told at that time in history, people will not come to see someone who's not femme presenting. It's not going to happen. And I begged the venue, and I remember it was Beto Suter and John Blair, who ran everything in New York at the time. And I was like, please just give me one night. I'm in rent. Please, I can get people. And they did. And it was 2 sets of 6 songs, and I would have special guests in each set, 4-piece band, 3 background singers. I would dress like of the time, like if Britney and Justin had a baby, it was crystallized, torn garment. It was fun. And it really just became this momentous night. And I think part of that is what got me Queer Eye. But yeah, it was a wild time. And so now when I'm between shows, I lean on that kind of storytelling.
And so, right, I mean, I guess, because that's the thing, most people know you in the world originally from Queer Eye, but you had a whole, cabaret in New York,
half
Broadway.
a decade of like being an actor, whether it was, and I think about my career and I'm like, the shows I was sort of first introduced to was Rent. So you have a multi-ethnic, multi-generational cast with different gender identities and sexual orientations. Then from there, I left and did a play at Lincoln Center about racism on a college campus, tackling issues like microaggressions and such. Then I played a non-binary character in a musical called Xana Don't, all before Queer Eye, which was culturally impactful for being the first all-out gay cast in network history. And I assumed that those years of my life, which were kind of like 8 years if you include Queer Eye, I just thought that was the way the world was. I was in the front of storytelling in a way that was so far ahead of its time that and then when I moved here, it was like culture shock in Los Angeles, thinking, well, I was successful I was on a show that was successful, Queer Eye. So I'll just parlay that into this dynamic scripted career because I had half a decade of it before. Nay. Like, I didn't know that it would be a challenge in 2006 when I moved here, being out, being Latin, and having, a pedigree of acting work that was, good. I didn't get the pass. I didn't get the golden ticket. I thought Hollywood would be more welcoming. So now in 2023, when I look around and in my opinion see little baby Jay Rodriguez is thriving, I'm amazed at how far we've come in the 20 years since Queer Eye, where the boxes that people check for diversity, whether it's gender expression, sexual orientation, their ethnicity, their race, those things are being celebrated specifically in ways that allow them to have some commerce in the work that they do. Like they're getting paid, they're getting brand deals, their artistry is being rewarded, and their identity is amplified now in a way that it was suppressed back then.
Interesting. There's so
There's
much.
so
there
much.
to-
Sorry, we're just starting out
I
just real
mean,
strong here.
There is so okay. So. Right. So, like, did you appreciate, like, okay, Xana, don't, I mean, even Rent, let's take Rent for a minute, you know, Jonathan Larson, like, that's people's.
Well, the wild thing, I was a kid from Long Island. I know you're familiar with Long Island, and I didn't have access to things that were happening in the city. It was a dark, wicked place. Grew up very evangelical, born again Christian, no TV, no secular music style, right? And I did get accepted to Performing Arts High School. So 11th and 12th grade was really when I started understanding what was happening in the world at large from my peers in that school. Many had big dreams and college aspirations. I knew pretty much that my family was not going to help out with college, specifically if I went for anything in the arts. So my options were limited. And in May of my senior year, my teachers were like, "Where are you applying, kid?" And I was like, "Yeah, my mom said she's not supporting me pursuing the arts, so nowhere." I had no college plans. And I remember like a teacher saying, "You should audition for Rent," which we had all seen as a class. I snuck out. Like I faked my mom's signature to get that pass to go into the city with my class to see Rent. And when I saw Rent, I did not see myself reflected because I didn't know anything about gay people or drag. And so when I saw the character of Angel, I was like, that's nice. I'll play Mark, like in my mind. And then that was like probably May. I got my first audition like via an agency like in August, and I was doing the show October 20th. It was my first day of rehearsal, really being introduced to things. In 1997 for folks, you know, so the first half decade of my life, I was playing a drag queen, which is fascinating because of everything that's going on in the world and how drag queens are suddenly a target.
Yeah, like you were ahead of your time with all
It's
these.
wild. I mean, to think about it then when, you know, people were in love with the show. And, you know, I remember folks from all political persuasions just being impassioned by the story. So many universal themes in Rent. And I don't remember a lot of pushback. However, I do remember a level of fear and safety concerns with, you know, going out in drag, especially in New York. You would think it's a safe, not in every space is safe. And so I do know there was a shift, and drag certainly wasn't celebrated. A lot of my drag performers at the time, you know, would do it as a side thing and had a real career, or a career that made them more money, I should say. It was before Drag Race. And now drag has become so mainstream that, of course, it's become an easy